Greetings everyone! This is a quick promo before the video begins. If you're new to the channel and you didn't know it yet, I am actually an author in addition to being a YouTuber, and I have 2 books that you can get on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1 and The Occult Mafia. The first is sort of a bizarre, absurdist kaiju anime mashup, and the other is a horror noir story with a hint of a western thrown in there. They're both set in the same universe, and at this point have received mostly positive reviews, so you might want to check them out. I've provided Amazon links for both of them down in the description. They're both available in either paperback or Amazon Kindle, and Operation Red Dragon is also available in audiobook form. So if either of these strike your fancy and you want to support a struggling artist, feel free to go down and check out either one or both of them. Alright, the shameless self-promotion is out of the way, we can get on with the video. Thank you all for your support. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and this is the most intense that Primal has been in a very long time. And given that Primal is a show known for its intensity, that is really saying something. But Night Feeder, that was the first impression I had when the episode was over. It was really, really intense. Not to mention very different, because it's an episode of many firsts. In particular, this is the first episode we've seen so far where we don't actually see the antagonist. Up until the very, very end, but for the most part the antagonist is kept completely hidden. That was definitely a bold choice, but a very effective one, because it creates this sense of the unknown. You know the old rule in horror, of course. The less you know, the scarier it is. Not knowing what is actually pursuing Spear and Fang in this episode really goes a long way towards making it a very effective villain. And makes for some great visual choices as well. There's a lot of POV shots in this episode, from the creature's perspective specifically. And that allowed the animators to really play around with what they were doing, how they presented certain things, made the show visually distinct. And again, this is a show that is already very visually distinct, so for them to make it even more distinct, that is very impressive. But of course we also get some good character moments. And this leads to another first. The first time that Fang has actually taken control of the situation while Spear was still active. For the most part in the series, Spear seems to be the one in charge. Both he and Fang are smart, but he's just a little bit smarter, being human, so he's the one who generally decides where they're gonna go, what they're gonna do, how they're gonna respond. He takes the lead most of the time. Even when it leads to trouble. Like these past few episodes in particular, especially the last one, his curiosity led him to look at what was going on, and if they just left it alone, they probably wouldn't have had any trouble. And especially considering that Fang in these past few episodes, her instincts have told her to leave well enough alone and stay away from whatever just caused all this trouble, or whatever they're seeing that's causing the trouble. Spear doesn't listen though, or he just figures it can't possibly be that bad this time around. And that particular little mini arc finally culminates in this episode where the mystery predator is attacking this entire herd of ceratopsians, slaughtering them all by itself. And Spear and Fang are close enough that they can hear what's going on, but far enough away that they're not in any immediate danger. They're just sitting by their campfire and they can hear what's going on. And Spear hears this thing attacking and he's like, okay, action time. Got my weapon, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fight. And Fang gets in his way and roars at him, but not just like a roar, singular roar, it's like she's talking. And again, there's no dialogue in this show, but at this point we've gotten to know the characters so well, and the animators have become so good at animating these characters' expressions and behaviors, and the voice actors and sound effects people have gotten so good at choosing just the right noises to make and implement, that we can tell what their conversation is, even though it's not comprised of actual words. It's essentially like Spears going, all right, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna kill this thing, whatever the heck it is. And Fang's going, Spear, not this time. Every single time you've let your curiosity get the better of you, we've wound up in trouble. I just wanted to leave well enough alone, but you just had to go sticking your nose where it didn't belong. Last time, I lost my free will because I was being mind controlled by some old crone. I am not having that happen again. This time, you are staying put, and I will take you down if I have to. And it works. Spear stays put, and then it leads to one of the more heavy moments in the series where they're staying by the campfire, but you can still hear the slaughter of that Ceratops herd going on in the background. They're still under attack. You can still hear all these horrible sounds. And Spear and Fang are just staying there because they can't do anything. Spear wants to do something, but he understands that he's unable to do anything at this point. And that is quite a moment. That's something that will really stick in your head. But then, of course, we get to the grand finale. And you know how I've said a couple times by now that you can really judge how good an action story is by those moments where there is no action? It's like Genndy Tartakovsky heard that and took it to its extreme conclusion for this episode. Because just before the finale, just before we get that final battle between our two protagonists and this mysterious antagonist, we have this steady build-up. It starts with a shot of this big juicy fly landing on a branch, and it gets snatched by a praying mantis who was just patiently waiting, obscured by some leaves. Now that's a good visual representation of what's going on. Had this been a show with dialogue in it, the characters probably would have been talking and making that comparison verbally, but instead we are shown what that's like. Because you know, anyone who has had a fly in their house knows how impossible they are to kill. You cannot hit them, you cannot guide them out of an open window or door. They are impossible to get a hold of. But a praying mantis is designed to be able to catch something like that. It is fast enough and lethal enough that it can. And that's basically where our characters are at. That's where the episode has put them. Spear and Fang are in the hard to kill category like the fly, but whatever this creature is, it's the mantis. And that moment tells us that it has the advantage. I did briefly wonder if they were hinting at what the creature would be. Turns out it's not a mantis, but I'll get to the actual reveal portion when the time is right. From there, the scene continues with Spear and Fang sitting by the fire, flinching at any unfamiliar sound from out in the woods, and they're trying to stay awake and stay vigilant, but they're slowly drifting to sleep because they're tired. They need to get their sleep, even though there is danger. And eventually they can't fight it anymore. They drift off to sleep, and then the fire just dies. It doesn't just slowly smolder to show the passage of time. Something blows it out, and in that moment I actually said out loud, uh-oh. That's how invested I was. And then the show just goes dead silent. There is no sound at all. No music, no ambient noise, nothing. Which, they did that over the credits of Coven of the Damned, but that was when the episode was technically over. This is another first. The first time there's been absolutely no sound during an episode. And during that silence, the cinematography develops this rhythm where it's wide shot of both Spear and Fang, close-up of Spear, close-up of Fang, wide shot, close-up, wide shot, getting subtly quicker, but without any sound, and you just know something is going to happen. You know that creature is going to strike at some point, and the characters are vulnerable, but nothing's happening, and the longer you're waiting, the more intensity you feel. It kind of reminds me of a moment from Orson Welles' Mercury Theater War of the Worlds broadcast. There's a moment where the radio broadcast is supposed to cut out because of the Martians firing, and because it was live, Orson held up his hand. This is a according to the behind the scenes, Orson held up his hand, and when he would lower his hand, that was the signal to come back in, and he kept his hand up for as long as he could, because he knew that at this point people were so invested that the silence was agony to them. And he kept it going as long as it needed to go. And that's the trick, as long as it needs to go. Because if you hold that silence for too long, the audience goes from, when is something gonna happen, to, when is something gonna happen? You don't want them to get bored or annoyed waiting for something. It has to be at just the right moment that the shoe drops. And boy does it drop in Primal. It's at just the right moment when that creature shrieks and Spear and Fang are awake and back on their feet. But then again, nothing happens right away. Now they're on guard, but they still don't know where this creature is. It could come from anywhere, it could strike from any point. And it builds again, only now there's sound. Now there's the music and the ambient jungle noises, and it manages to do the exact same thing it just did without feeling like it's trying your patience. That in and of itself is quite impressive. And then, of course, the creature does strike, and that's where we get our battle, where Spear and Fang and this creature are playing cat and mouse in the fog. And I actually think the inclusion of the fog was a nice, subtle hint as to why it's having a harder time with them. Because it doesn't attack in the fog at any other point. We know it's very good at night. It is lethal. It has the advantage in the dark. But because of the fog, it can't see as well, so that kind of evens the playing field. And they don't make a big deal out of it. It's just something that you notice when you actually think about it. And during that finale, they do kind of cheat in a way, because there are some shots where there's no reason why we wouldn't see this thing, but we don't see it anyway. But, you know, you gotta take into account that they're trying to maintain the mystery. They've played around with visuals like that in the past. I won't make too big of a deal out of it. But it leads to that final moment where Spear, completely by accident, figures out the creature's weakness. He's swinging his namesake weapon around, and the tip, the actual point, sparks against a rock and causes a brief flash of light that sends the creature recoiling. And you can see that realization as both Spear and Fang figure it out, and they're like, ah, this thing hates light. Haha. And from that point on, the mystery predator is on the run. Then we get our point of view shot from that thing's perspective, only now it's being chased and Spear and Fang are the monsters. Great reversal. And of course that leads to our very last shot, in which we do get our glimpse of this thing. And rather surprisingly, it's a dinosaur. A fairly normal looking dinosaur, aside from the fact that it's jet black, has red eyes, I believe, and big old claws on the end of its hands. I'm sure many people will compare it to maybe a Deinonychus or the Therizinosaurus, but I don't think it's any real species. It's probably a made-up one. And you know, a part of me wondered if they were going to show what the thing is and whether or not that would be a good idea. But I think at that point, it was okay to show it. For the rest of the episode, when you're trying to make it a scary, threatening creature, maintaining that mystery is vital, because the less you know about this thing, the more horrifying it is. But by the end, it's on the run. Now it's the prey. The threat is gone. So at that point, there's no reason to maintain that mystery for that reason. And it also, the fact that it's just a dinosaur, that also leads to some odd questions, because we were led up to this point to think that there is something clearly wrong with this thing. The way animals react to it, the way Fang reacts to the kill, that poor saber-tooth that it slaughtered, they all indicate that something is not right about this creature. Sort of in a similar way to the zombie sauropod, but different, obviously, because it's not a zombie. At least as far as we see. So that begs the question of, what is this creature's deal? Maybe this is one of those things we're not supposed to know, sort of like the connection between the giant spider and the red bat creatures. But if there is a reason for it, because I feel like there must be. I feel like there's gotta be a reason, because we've seen too many examples of things like this, where the characters come across something that is entirely unnatural and should not be engaged in any way, yet they wind up engaging with it anyway. It feels like that must be building towards something. And if it is, what could it be? I do have a theory. I wonder if it's got something to do with the return of the ape men, because according to the next episode teaser, they're coming back. I think it's the same creatures, or at least the same species, obviously not the ones that were killed, but it feels like they're coming back for round 2, and if that's the case, is there a connection there? Could this creature maybe have been filled with that black serum stuff that turns you into a monster? We've seen what it does to hominids. We haven't seen what it does to dinosaurs. So, if there's a connection there, that's my theory at this point. I don't know if that'll actually wind up being anything significant, but it could be. And either way, it still makes for a really effective episode. Obviously not as emotional as the previous episode, but then again, that's not really what it was going for. It was going for pulse-pounding, edge-of-your-seat, biting your nails down to the nubs action. And at that, it really succeeds. It also succeeds in being visually inventive. It found a way to shake up the visuals while not looking like something completely unrecognizable. And for that, I have to applaud the episode. Well, not much of the series left. This is still proving to be one heck of a wild ride. There hasn't been a single bad episode of Primal so far. Man, I wish I could make something this good. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, really, so I guess that's my cue to shut up. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, then go down to the description to find links to follow us on DeviantArt, Patreon, and Twitter. While you're there, you'll also find the Amazon links for the original novels Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, and The Occult Mafia. 2 books I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.